Hi, I'm Graham again, and I'm really glad you're back for our second discussion about how to bring about peace, whether it's inner peace or whether it's peace with people around you. And I want to start by telling you one of my favorite stories. It's actually a true story about something that happened back in the 90s. I want to tell you about Rabbi Michael Weiser. Now, Rabbi Weiser was a rabbi in Lincoln, Nebraska back in the 90s. And in serving his congregation, one of the things that really began to disturb him were phone calls that he was getting. They weren't phone calls from his congregation, they were phone calls from a man named Larry Trapp. Larry Trapp was the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan chapter in Lincoln, Nebraska. And Larry Trapp began to leave messages on Rabbi Weiser's phone that were ranting and hate filled and angry, just accusing him and all the Jews of just awful and terrible things. And there got to be a point where Rabbi Weiser just really, he had had enough. And so he began to do research on Larry Trapp. He found out that Larry Trapp was confined to a wheelchair. And so he ended up calling back and leaving messages for Larry Trapp on Larry Trapp's racist hotline. Things saying like, I know you support Adolf Hitler. Did you know that you would have been among the first killed by Hitler because of your disability? And he began to leave these kinds of messages constantly. And then one day when he called, Larry Trapp picked up the phone. And Larry Trapp yelled into the phone saying, "Why are you doing this? Why are you calling me? Can't you leave me alone?" And in a moment of, I don't know what it was, inspiration, insight, enlightenment, whatever you might want to call it, Michael Weiser responded in a way that was different from how he had anticipated. And he just simply said to Larry Trapp, he said, "Larry, I know that you have a disability and sometimes it's hard for you to get out. Do you need me to do anything for you? Do you need me to help you get groceries or anything like that?" And Larry Trapp just kind of stammered and hemmed and hawed and said, No, I'm fine. And he hung up the phone. And Rabbi Weiser realized this was an in towards transformation, a path possibly to some kind of peace. And so he began to call Larry Trapp on a regular basis. But these were different phone calls. These were phone calls to Larry Trapp asking if he needed help, basically asking him if he was okay, and asking him what he could do. And one day he got a phone call from Larry Trapp, and Larry Trapp stammered, hemmed, hawed, and then finally said, "I need help getting out. Can you help me?" You can imagine that Rabbi Weiser would have been quite afraid of this. Is this a trap or is this something else? But he decided to put away his fear, and he drove over there and he picked up Larry Trapp and he brought him to his house for dinner. And they had dinner together and they talked and they shared. And this slowly became a regular thing. Eventually they became good enough friends that Michael Weiser actually asked Larry if he could give him a substitute ring for his swastika ring. He gave him a silver ring to put on, which was a friendship ring. And slowly over time, Larry Trapp began to change and began to seek a way of peace. It got to the point where Larry Trapp became so much a part of Rabbi Weiser's family that Rabbi Weiser's kids began to call him Uncle Larry. And over time, Larry Trapp and Michael Weiser began to travel the country and travel all over, talking about how to overcome conflict and find peace. Here's the thing. We live in a time of conflict. I don't think there's any conflict over that idea that we live in a time of conflict. And as you're watching this video or listening to me, you may have a belief that the media is too liberal. Or you may have a belief that the media is too conservative. Or you may have a belief that the media is too much everywhere. I'm going to tell you basically what the media is. The media is conflict driven. Quite frankly, that's what the media makes money off of. They don't make money off of being conservative or liberal or in between. They make money off of conflict. And we play into that by giving into their conflict. Now, I'm not saying don't watch the news. I am saying remember that as you give in to this whole atmosphere of conflict, it robs you of inner peace. And it takes away your ability to forge peace with others. Rabbi Weiser used his faith and his own self-awareness to create peace and to transform Larry Trapp. But we live in a time when people abuse faith, abuse religion, abuse even Jesus' words to create conflict and controversy, because that's what gives them a life. When they create controversy, they feel powerful. When they create conflict, they make money. And the question is, do we really want to live this way? Neither you nor I can change the media. Neither you nor I can change all those people who want conflict in the world. But we can do something. So I'm going to close with 3 ways, 3 things that can be done that can transform conflict into peace. The first thing is, when our fear about anything, whatever it is, politics, the coronavirus, protests, whatever, when our fear screams at us to either fight others or to flee from others or to just freeze and do nothing, instead of giving in to fight, flee, or freeze, look instead on how to befriend. If you're in a Facebook argument with someone, look for a way that you can actually move out of it and befriend somebody instead of fighting or fleeing from that person. And that's the first thing. When our fears scream at us, look for how to befriend instead of fight, flee, or freeze. Second, when you are engaged in any kind of conflict, care more about that person than you do about the issue. Face-to-face conversation is always better than Facebook. And relationship is always more important than rightness. So care more about the person than the issue if you want peace. Finally, you will end up in conflict at some point. I end up in conflict at points. The key is not whether or not you avoid conflict or engage in conflict. The question is, can you look even at conflict where there's a lack of peace as an opportunity to reconcile? When you are in conflict, can you see it as a way to reconcile? When you are in an argument, can you care more about the person than about the issue? And when your fear is causing you to flee or fight or freeze, look instead for how to befriend. Because that's the model and the inspiration of Rabbi Weiser, who in his fear looked to befriend Larry Trapp. And when it came down to it, he cared more about Larry than he did about the issue. And he saw their conflict as an opportunity to reconcile. Thank you for being a part of this, and I look forward to seeing you next month when we move on in our Fruitful Life series.